During the Great Depression, dessert did not represent excess. It represented resilience. When jobs vanished and cupboards emptied, American families still searched for sweetness, using what little they had. These were not treats of luxury, but acts of quiet defiance against hunger and despair. This video reveals 10 desserts created from scarcity, recipes born when flour, sugar, and milk were measured carefully or missing entirely. Each dish carried hope to crowded tables and tired hands. What follows is not nostalgia alone. It is survival, ingenuity, and the reason these desserts mattered. Their stories deserve attention before they fade from memory. Part 1 begins with water pie, a dessert that sounded impossible yet appeared on many Depression-era tables. The recipe emerged when pantries held little more than flour, sugar, and faith. Water replaced milk, stretching supplies without sacrificing warmth or ritual. Families heated water with sugar and a small amount of fat, thickened it with flour, and poured the mixture into a simple crust. Nutmeg or vanilla, when available, provided aroma rather than abundance. Water pie mattered because it preserved dignity. Serving dessert meant normalcy, especially for children who did not need to understand scarcity. This pie was rarely praised for flavor. It was respected for purpose. It filled plates, calmed hunger, and used ingredients already on hand. Home economists and community cookbooks documented it carefully, proving it was not myth, but practice. In kitchens across the Midwest and Appalachia, water pie appeared at the end of meals as a quiet promise. Life was unstable, but routine endured. This dessert asked little and gave enough. Its existence reminds us that survival was often measured not in calories alone, but in the ability to keep traditions alive when circumstances tried to erase them. That meaning explains why families remembered it decades. Part 2 focuses on vinegar pie, a dessert created to imitate fruit pies when fruit was unavailable or unaffordable. The sharpness of vinegar replaced the brightness of apples or lemons, while sugar and butter softened its edge. Combined with flour and water, the filling baked into something familiar enough to satisfy expectation. This was intentional. During the Great Depression, familiarity carried value. Vinegar pie appeared in handwritten recipe cards and regional cookbooks, especially in rural communities where orchards failed or imports were impossible. Cooks understood balance. A small amount of vinegar provided acidity, not sourness. Nutmeg or cinnamon added warmth, creating the illusion of abundance. Nothing in the recipe was wasted. This dessert served a psychological purpose. It allowed families to recreate remembered flavors using limited means. Children recognized the shape and ritual of pie, even if the ingredients had changed. That continuity mattered during years defined by loss. Vinegar pie was never meant to impress. It was meant to endure. Its survival in family memory proves its role was larger than taste. It represented adaptation, restraint, and the refusal to abandon comfort when conditions offered none. These pies quietly marked perseverance at tables where scarcity dictated every decision daily. Part 3 examines mock apple pie, a dessert that contained no apples yet carried their memory. This recipe relied on crackers, sugar, water, and spices to recreate the texture and flavor of fruit filling. During the Great Depression, apples were seasonal and often unavailable. Crackers, however, were shelf-stable and predictable. That reliability made them valuable. Cooks crushed or layered crackers, then simmered them with sugar, lemon, or vinegar to introduce acidity. Cinnamon and nutmeg completed the illusion. When baked inside a crust, the result resembled apple pie closely enough to satisfy expectation. This was not deception. It was resourcefulness. Mock apple pie appeared in company pamphlets and community kitchens, confirming its widespread use. It allowed families to preserve a cultural symbol using substitute ingredients. Apple pie represented home and stability. Recreating it, even imperfectly, held emotional weight. This dessert demonstrates how memory shaped cooking decisions. Flavor mattered, but meaning mattered more. Serving mock apple pie allowed households to hold onto identity during economic collapse. It reinforced continuity when familiar foods disappeared. That quiet preservation of tradition explains why the recipe endured and why it deserves recognition as a true product of its time. Part 4 centers on Depression chocolate cake, a dessert created without eggs, milk, or butter. Cocoa powder provided richness when other ingredients were unavailable or too costly. Vinegar and baking soda replaced eggs, producing structure through chemical reaction rather than abundance. This method was precise, not improvised. The cake emerged from necessity and knowledge. Home cooks understood how ingredients behaved under heat. They combined flour, sugar, cocoa, oil, water, and leavening in exact proportions. The result was moist, dark, and reliable. This cake appeared in community cookbooks, school lessons, and relief kitchen instructions, confirming its widespread acceptance. Chocolate held emotional importance. It suggested comfort and reward during a period defined by restraint. Serving cake marked birthdays, holidays, and small victories. The absence of dairy did not lessen its value. Its presence on the table signaled effort and care. Depression chocolate cake endured because it worked. It required little, wasted nothing, and produced consistency. More importantly, it allowed families to maintain rituals of celebration. In years shaped by loss, that ability mattered. This cake stands as evidence that skill and understanding could replace excess when necessity demanded discipline. Part 5 explores cornstarch pudding, a dessert built on thickening rather than richness. When milk was scarce or rationed, water often replaced it. Cornstarch provided body, turning liquid into substance. Sugar offered sweetness, measured carefully. Flavoring, when available, came from vanilla, nutmeg, or cinnamon. This pudding appeared in household manuals and relief guidance because it required few ingredients and little fuel. It cooked quickly and stretched supplies. Texture mattered more than indulgence. A warm bowl provided comfort and a sense of completion after a modest meal. Cornstarch pudding served children and elders especially well. It was easy to digest and familiar in form. Families valued foods that calmed hunger without strain. The pudding did not pretend to be elaborate. Its strength was dependability. The dessert reflects how science entered everyday cooking. Thickening agents allowed cooks to create volume without expense. This knowledge passed through generations, often without formal instruction. Cornstarch pudding became part of the survival kitchen, repeated because it worked. Its importance lies in restraint. It demonstrated that sweetness could exist without abundance. During the Great Depression, that lesson mattered. This pudding was not remembered for flavor alone. It was remembered for how little it asked and how reliably it delivered nourishment and comfort. Part 6 examines rice pudding made with water instead of milk, a practice shaped by scarcity rather than preference. Rice was inexpensive, filling, and easy to store. When dairy was unavailable, cooks adapted by simmering rice slowly in water until the starch released and created body. Sugar was added sparingly. Spices provided familiarity. This pudding relied on patience. Long cooking softened the grains and thickened the liquid. The result was modest but sustaining. It appeared in household advice columns and community kitchens because it maximized energy from limited supplies. Rice expanded during cooking, feeding more people with less cost. Water-based rice pudding carried meaning beyond nutrition. It allowed families to serve a recognizable dessert even when traditional ingredients disappeared. That continuity helped maintain routine during unstable years. Children understood the dish, even if its richness had changed. The recipe demonstrates disciplined cooking. Nothing was rushed or wasted. Each step respected fuel, time, and availability. Rice pudding endured because it balanced practicality with comfort. In the context of the Great Depression, that balance mattered. The dish represented quiet endurance, proving that careful technique could replace luxury when survival depended on adaptation. Part 7 focuses on bread pudding, a dessert rooted in thrift long before the Great Depression. During economic collapse, its purpose became essential. Stale bread was never discarded. It was dried, cubed, and transformed. Water or diluted milk softened the crumbs. Sugar was limited. Fat, if present, was minimal. Spices supplied warmth and familiarity. Bread pudding appeared in relief kitchens, farm homes, and city apartments because it converted waste into nourishment. Eggs were optional and often absent. Structure came from soaking and slow baking. The dish emerged firm enough to slice, filling enough to share. Raisins or syrup were added only when available, never assumed. This dessert reinforced discipline. Saving bread meant planning ahead. Preparing pudding meant patience. Both habits mattered when income was uncertain and fuel was precious. Families relied on foods that could be repeated without risk. Bread pudding also preserved ritual. Serving dessert signaled completion of a meal, even when portions were small. That signal carried comfort. The recipe endured because it respected limits while sustaining tradition. In Depression kitchens, bread pudding represented careful stewardship, proving that nothing edible was beyond recovery or purpose. Such restraint defined households and taught lasting lessons about value, care, and survival. Part 8 examines gelatin desserts, a seemingly simple treat that became a symbol of ingenuity during the Great Depression. Gelatin was inexpensive, shelf-stable, and versatile. Families often added water, sugar, and small amounts of fruit or syrup when available. These desserts required no milk, eggs, or fat, making them practical for kitchens constrained by scarcity. Cooks understood the science behind gelatin. Dissolving it correctly, cooling it at the right temperature, and adding flavor carefully ensured the dessert held form. When molded, it resembled more elaborate confections from wealthier households. Presentation mattered as much as flavor. Even minimal ingredients could produce a visually appealing dish that comforted children and guests. Gelatin desserts appeared in relief cookbooks and community guidance because they maximized limited resources while maintaining dignity at the table. Their bright color and wobbly texture introduced variety during a period dominated by plain staples. The act of creating a molded dessert gave families control when circumstances offered little. This dessert endured because it combined simplicity with effect. It did not require abundance, yet it produced satisfaction. Gelatin demonstrates how knowledge and careful technique could transform humble ingredients into meaningful experiences. In Depression kitchens, this dessert was more than food. It was creativity, perseverance, and small joys served on a plate. Part 9 focuses on Hoover's Stew Sweet variant, a dessert adaptation of a humble, savory dish. Originally a simple stew of available vegetables and scraps, cooks transformed it into a sweet pudding when sugar, syrup, or dried fruit was accessible. This practice illustrates the creativity imposed by scarcity during the Great Depression. Families combined small amounts of flour or cornmeal with water, sugar, and any available fruit or molasses to create a thickened mixture. Spices, such as cinnamon or nutmeg, were added sparingly to evoke richness. The result resembled a porridge-like dessert, nourishing yet sweet enough to be recognized as a treat. Hoover's Stew Sweet variant was documented in regional cookbooks and home economics guides. Its inclusion underscores the importance of maximizing resources. Ingredients were never wasted. Every portion contributed to sustenance and morale. This dessert carried practical value, extending the utility of minimal supplies while maintaining ritual at the table. Serving it also reinforced a sense of normalcy. Even in hardship, families preserved mealtime traditions. The dish demonstrates how innovation became a survival skill. It was repeated because it worked, not because it was luxurious. Hoover's Stew Sweet variant endures in memory as a symbol of adaptation, ingenuity, and resilience, illustrating that even desserts could sustain hope during the most difficult years. Part 10 highlights Poor Man's Custard, a dessert that embodied simplicity and resourcefulness. Traditionally, custard required eggs and milk, But during the Great Depression, these ingredients were scarce. Families adapted by using water, flour, and sugar to approximate texture and sweetness. The result was modest but recognizable. Cooks carefully combined flour and water over heat, stirring constantly until the mixture thickened. Sugar and spices, such as nutmeg or cinnamon, were added for flavor. Occasionally, a small amount of fat or a thin layer of milk enhanced richness, but it was never assumed. The focus remained on creating sustenance from minimal resources. Poor man's custard was widely documented in community cookbooks and relief guidance, proving its practicality. It provided a sense of completion after meals, offering familiarity in uncertain times. Children and adults alike recognized it as dessert, even if the ingredients differed from traditional recipes. This custard illustrates how technique replaced abundance. Precision in stirring and timing produced a consistent result, teaching patience and care. Its endurance reflects the resilience of households determined to maintain tradition despite hardship. Poor man's custard was more than nourishment. It was a quiet statement of perseverance, demonstrating that even the humblest dessert could preserve comfort, ritual, and hope when scarcity defined daily life.